This is BEAUTYSNAKE. You might recognize them from their fluid animation, organic realistic movements, beautiful effects, and vivid aesthetics. That, or you're already familiar with her cthulu cuttlefish ray of sunshine and have already fallen in love with her. Either way, having amassed almost 400,000 subscribers and over 47 million views, it's clear that she has something to show for all the work she's put into her videos. So I wanted to talk to her to figure out how to make work that's sure to stun, and in the meantime, figure out where she's been for the past year. As BEAUTYSNAKE told me, so many people are out there stuck where I was in the 2010s, seeing animation as this daunting task. But truthfully, it's way easier once you get past that learning curve. My name is Soul. I spoke to BEAUTYSNAKE, and I think you should hear her story. One of the most striking animators I've come across in recent years is BEAUTYSNAKE, or Kayla. You've probably already seen her stunning, fully animated music videos before. If you haven't, it's a sight to behold and a great example of how a concrete understanding of the fundamentals of art can lead to creating striking visuals that draw you into the world you're watching. A video that I'm particularly fond of is Udachi Parody. The video's distinctive background effects give it a real sense of tone and character that sticks out among others. It made me ask myself, how did all those effects and ideas come into being? I remember having trouble figuring out what to do with the editing for Udachi Parody. I wanted to try something new with After Effects, but still have it relate to Miyu's sense of pop. She was still a very new character at the time. I first designed her around February of that year, and Parody was essentially her debut. One thing I knew for certain though was that Miyu was based around pop culture with a slight scene/cyber twist. RGB was already a part of her character design, and so I wanted to work that into the video itself in some way. Personally, I just liked how the halftones looked. It reminded me of something out of a magazine. There were early versions of Parody that didn't have the reactive effect, and I think with a song that bouncy, it really needed the extra push. I ended up combining two tutorials and offsetting the playback for each layer to get what can be seen in the final version. Every now and then, when I struggle to come up with ideas, I look at random After Effects tutorials. You'll never know when you may need it. Designing your backgrounds around your characters can enhance your work by communicating their personalities and traits without words. It characterizes your drawings without needing to add additional scenes that'll take hours to animate. Characters with strong personalities can be more interesting to look at and feel more real, so go crazy. Also, watching tutorials, other animations, and seeing art in general is an excellent way of expanding your mental library. Your mental library is everything you've ever absorbed in which you base your art on. A bigger mental library means more inspiration sources and a more well-rounded, unique style too. But Udachi Parody was released over 3 years ago. What has BEAUTYSNAKE worked on since? Well, her skills have continued to flourish. Her most recent animation, Barbie World, holds to that same level of polished, captivating animation. But how do you keep up with making jaw-dropping content at every turn? How do you keep up with uploading? I think it's a love-hate relationship with the amount of time it takes me to produce videos. I'd really love to limit myself, but the more work I put into videos, the more I feel I should live up to those standards. Not every video will be an AMV, and eventually I need to bite the bullet and start posting what some would call lazy content in order to meet that sort of deadline. I do still like to push myself though, and I wouldn't want to give up longer projects entirely. It's just so difficult to stay relevant when you only post every 3 to 6 months. Hell, the YouTube thing is something I stumbled into. I don't want to squander a chance to make something of a career from it. I'm in a very fortunate position, but with that many eyes on you, you really don't want to let them down, right? Trying to live up to the expectations I have for myself is challenging. At the end of the day, I never want to stop having fun, and a lot of that fun comes from trying something new. Not everything is going to be a hit though. Back in early 2021, I didn't care about getting a hit because I was getting maybe 1,000 views if I was lucky. What I made back then, I made purely for myself and the enjoyment of creation. I think I've been chasing that high ever since. Now I have over 350,000 subscribers, and I can never really be sure who I'm making art for. I don't hate what I make, it's quite the opposite, but sometimes I can't help but feel that little crumb that made the art mine is slipping away. An interesting thing to note is that your view of lazy content is usually vastly different from your audience's. We as artists stare at our work for hours on end. The process of creating involves so much looking at and analyzing the same images for hours that you're bound to notice flaws and errors that most others won't. You'll be far more in tune with your flaws than 90% of people, and it may diminish the accomplishments your art does achieve in your mind. You might feel the need to keep achieving higher and higher level work for yourself to overcome that, but in reality, your general audience's reaction will usually be, wow, great video, I love the art in this, either way. So if you don't feel like going all the way every single time, you don't have to. There's nothing wrong with that. Besides, we're all human and have needs. It's hard to spend months on end working on a single project, so scale things as you need. For those projects you do want to make longer, the special ones, how do you achieve that? I think breaks are necessary. Sometimes you gotta step back for a month or two before you can fall in love with the project again. And if that love never comes back, well, it was good practice and great Patreon material. I love the acceptance that Kayla has over some projects not being finished. Seeing even your unfinished work as a good thing, not something to hate or judge yourself for not being able to complete, brings a lot more peace into your mind than if you keep on harping on yourself. Finishing things is great, but sometimes if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. You don't need to torture yourself. It's an unnecessary burden that'll weigh on you with guilt as you try and create further. While we're on the subject of torturing yourself though, let's talk assignments. BEAUTYSNAKE studied at Kansas City Art Institute, graduating in 2020. She details one of the first projects she had to do and how it impacted her animation. She said, "When you write a story, you don't think, man, I have to write 100,000 words to complete this story. It's not about the words or how many you have, it's about how you use them. And with written language, it's natural not to think about individual words when you string them into a sentence. But it can be hard for new animators, especially those who started out illustrating, to see frames as a part of a greater whole. When I was in KCAI's PCAL program, one of the first assignments we had was to make a flipbook of 100 frames. It could be anything, but it had to be completed by the following day. At the time, 100 frames was more than 3 times the length of anything I'd made previously, and it was super intimidating. But when I started animating, yeah, 100 frames sounded like a lot, but as it turned out, I needed all those frames. All I did was animate a match burning. Something about that project just made it click with me, and I started to see frames differently. I know a lot of people still view frames as though they were entire illustrations, and it intimidates them into not animating. I mean, hell, imagine having to draw 100 illustrations in a night. But I think the best thing you can do is challenge yourself. 100 frames is not 100 illustrations. Animation is informed by each frame doing its part to convey motion. Each frame references another until movement is captured. Focus on the motion, not how many frames it takes to capture it. The more you dread the labor you need to put into a project, the less likely you are to finish it. Kayla's analogy about writing a story works as a great parallel, and I think it helps reshift the process of animation in your mind. Thinking about just how much you need to do and just how daunting of a task it's going to be allows you to procrastinate and never actually get to the point of making. Cut off that mindset at the source and you can create sooner. If you think about animation more abstractly, in scenes or movements, you can get past the initial fear of the workload. Perhaps one way is to try the very assignment that Kayla was given. If you want someone to hold you accountable, feel free to post it and share it with everyone in the comment section below. I'd love to see what you make. But, Kayla, can you tell us more about your time at KCAI? I went to Kansas City Art Institute and graduated from their animation program in May 2020. I always like to stress that art school is not for everyone, and I recommend looking into your specific circumstances before you decide you should or shouldn't attend. I had way more structure and resources than I would have otherwise. I think that at KCAI, at least when I was there, the animation department was very tight-knit. We were like a family. We always wanted to help one another, explore and experiment with one another. No one wanted to see another person fail. We were all there for each other. I think the community was a huge part of the experience, and I'd be a worse artist had I not gotten to experience it. To tell you the truth, I feel a lot of our classes and department's unity came from the fact that KCAI as a school didn't take animation too seriously. We had to face adversity together in the name of our craft. The school placed such an emphasis on the fine arts exhibitions that we were often swept under the rug despite being a larger department. Typically, we'd set up a projector wherever we had space, and usually the ones to stop by would be other animation students or illustrators. To my knowledge, illustration students had similar issues with the school, but I can't speak for them. I don't mean to make my school seem awful or anything. Anywhere you go, there will be politics, but the animation department was wonderful for the resources we had. Your community will elevate you, and who you surround yourself is who you will become. Put yourself around passionate artists who care about stuff just as much as you do and watch as both your skills and theirs flourish. Not only was BEAUTYSNAKE kind enough to share her experiences, but also her expertise. Kayla gave a lot of great tips, and I wanted to put them all together. First of all, I noticed when watching her videos that Kayla adds a lot of additional movements that help make the characters feel more natural. How do you achieve an effect like that? I guess the best way I can put it is that I focus on a few individual body parts as I animate, especially for overlapping motion like the follow through on the ears or the timing on Pap's head. I felt her head needed a few extra frames as opposed to her body. It can also look nice to just vary the timing on animation a bit. Not everything has to start and end at the same time. It can feel more natural if it doesn't. If something catches your interest, you're going to notice it first with your eyes, then your head, and maybe even your torso as your interest peaks and you turn your attention fully towards it. As for the eye movement in Udachi Parody, that was actually a suggestion from a Patreon, and it was a good idea too. Adding a bit of motion to the eyes of an otherwise still image adds a lot more life and just makes a shot that lasts as long as that one does stick out way less. It's very painless to do since it adds very little time to the project but makes a shot look way better. Kayla references several of the 12 animation principles, specifically follow through, secondary action, and anticipation. It's more than I can cover in this video, but if you're new to animation, Alan Becker has a great video series on each one. But a specific note you can take from her explanation is that she animates one body part at a time. Many animators go through and do a pass with just the head movement or just the body and add details like ears and hair on later passes. It keeps you thinking about the movement you're capturing instead of making the drawing look perfect. That and adding little details that don't require a ton of animation but do add liveliness can do a lot for your animations. It's why a ton of animators use wiggle frames and simply flip back and forth between two images. Any sort of movement adds visual engagement to your art. It keeps people's eyes on it and adds visual appeal without needing every frame you make to be part of a fully animated scene, which is vital if you want to do animation. Okay, there's more to go through, so let's flash through some quick tips. Tip 1. Remember your arches. Almost everything moves on a curve, so if something looks janky to you, double check that the arc isn't broken. Looking through BEAUTYSNAKE'S videos, you'll see a curve in almost every motion. This is another animation principle and an essential one at that. In the natural world, things like arms will move in arcs. Adding even a slight arc to your animations helps it look significantly more natural. If you have trouble implementing these, you can try making a test animation where you're thinking about how you add it to each and every movement. I can only show so many examples in this video, but seriously, it happens all the time in good animation. Do some research, slow down other animators' videos and play them frame by frame and try and look for these arcs. On YouTube, you can do this by hitting the comma and period keys to flip through each frame. You'll see what I mean. Tip 2. Off the top of my head, one potential limiting factor I see in new animators is the overuse of smear frames. I actually underuse them and I've been trying to get better about that, but I notice newer animators tend to smear very simple motions like an ear flick instead of taking the time to animate individual frames. It can lead to this sort of slidey elastic effect. It's also important to explore different timing and spacing options, and you might find something that works better, looks nicer, and hell, might even be easier on you. Tip 3. What has helped you the most in your animation? Honestly, studying anatomy from the ground up has helped me a lot. Learning how the bones fit together, what muscles work in what motions, and the overall mechanics of the body. But since I can't give you that much in this simple interview, when I went to CTNX in 2019, I was in a portfolio review group with 2 other students. The review was held by Ted Tai, who has worked on many movies as a character animator, including The Lion King, Mulan, and Lilo and Stitch. He was critiquing a 3D animation reel one of the other students presented, and he said something that really stuck with me. Paraphrasing, of course. When you animate a character, you animate their train of thought. Emotion largely governs how a character behaves, and by changing the order of an action in a dialogue, you can change their emotional state when speaking. Imagine character A being reprimanded by their boss, B. As B says, "Don't do that," they extend their hand downward towards the desk between them as a way to emphasize this idea. Now, imagine if B starts this action slightly before speaking the sentence. When someone speaks, the idea comes to them before the words do. Sometimes their gesticulation precedes their dialogue. In this context, that gesture makes B feel more sincere, stern, and even frustrated. But if B starts the dialogue before the gesture, it makes the idea feel more rehearsed because B is being careful and intentional. Now, the idea acting as animating a character's thought process seems obvious, and to a degree I had already been doing it. But this had shone a spotlight on that idea, and it's something I do consciously now instead of subconsciously. Alright, so with that in mind, we know BEAUTYSNAKE can make great work. But her last animation was over a year ago. Can you tell us a little bit about where you've been? Oh man, the past year or so has been a lot of freelancing. Right now I'm doing storyboards for the game Billy Bust Up, so as you can imagine I'm under NDA. What I can tell you is it's been a wonderful experience working with other creatives. It reminds me a lot of the community that I had with my classmates back at KCAI. This was my first time as a hired storyboarder, and I struggled at first. I feel we all struggle with imposter syndrome at one point in our lives, but I found myself quickly warming up to the energy of the team. Better yet, seeing my boards brought to life with animation, music, and lighting has been incredibly humbling. We create together, troubleshoot, and problem solve together. There's a little piece of all of us in this project, both in the technical side and also in the story. I find it's hard to not be moved by that. Beauty Snake, it's clear you've achieved a tremendous amount of success in just a few years of posting on YouTube. You've inspired thousands, and clearly, your art resonates with many people. Everything from your principles to your polish seems to be handled with a level of mastery and ease that anyone would be glad to aspire to. Before you go, can you tell us a little bit about why you started posting in the first place? Truthfully, I never considered doing animations on YouTube in the 2010s. Back then, I was really only interested in making looping GIFs. I only really saw animation as an accessory to an illustration, if that makes sense. Animation was a chore, and I only really did it for the novelty of having something move. It wasn't until I was forced out of that bubble that I discovered a passion for animating. Then, in 2020, I graduated. I had no job and no clue where to go after that, so I sank myself into working on my CGA, senior graduation animation. I figured I'd worry about life once I was done, but I never finished that film. One of my biggest concerns was whether or not I'd be able to keep up animation once I lost those external deadlines that school provided. As 2020 progressed, I was getting more and more depressed until I finally took a break from that project. I started revisiting things from my teen years, stuff that made me happy. I started drawing furries again. Finally, I decided to try an animation meme, and I enjoyed it. I liked having a formula to fall back on. It was something I quite literally jumped into without any intentional narrative, and I loved the freedom it provided. I think because there was no clear narrative, no intention, Bloom became my most vulnerable video. Somehow it perfectly captured my mental state without ever intending to be an event piece. It needed to be made though. I'm not sure where I'd be if I didn't say, F it, I'm going to try something new. What you make for yourself, what drew you to animation perhaps when you were only a kid, is what will fuel you and take you further. Lean into the part of yourself that created things just for fun, just because you thought that they would be awesome. There's so much pressure in today's world to create content, to be constantly working and outputting. But your childhood self, the one that was so enchanted by artwork that you saw, didn't think about content and metrics. They thought about drawing their little characters to dance and move and come to life. Lean into what you love. It makes art that everyone can see the passion and deep connection in. Artists, create what you love and let it take you further. Big thanks to Beauty Snake for talking with me about her animation. Her work is excellent, and I have no doubt that whatever she chooses to do, she'll excel in her field. Please send her support on all of her platforms. They're linked in the description below. Soul Candy is a project aiming to inspire and help artists. If you're interested in twice-a-month videos including interviews with creators you know and learning about tips that revolutionized my art and process, stick around and consider subscribing and liking the video. That's all from me, so thanks for watching.